Good evening to everybody who's just joined us. You're here for ProMed's webinar on interacting with other services at events. We're going to be starting in just a couple of minutes to give everybody a final chance to get logged in. Please do share where you're from, what clinical role you have, what event experience you have, how long you've been doing this. It's great to see so many different people from across the UK joining us so far. I can see quite a few new faces to our webinars, so hello to everybody who's here for the first time, and a welcome back to everybody who is following our webinar series. Just going to give it another minute and then we'll be making a start. Okay, once again, a very warm welcome to everybody who's joining us tonight. My name is Matt Dinnery and I'm going to be your presenter this evening. I'm a qualified teacher with experience at many events from 50 people up to 280,000 people, and I've done many roles at events. I've worked in security, I've worked in medical, I've worked in crowd safety, I've worked as part of site crews, I've worked on stages, I've done you name it, I've probably done it at an event. We're going to be looking tonight at all the different services in events from a medical perspective and how they will be helping us. First of all, before we go any further, I just want to know a little bit about where everybody is from, what your clinical grades are, what your backgrounds are. So if you wouldn't mind just quickly answering our polls just to let us know. It's good to know who's in the room, and that way we can just tailor that presentation based on everybody's experience. So you should all be able to see that poll now. Just 3 questions: where you're from, what your clinical grade is, and what event experience you have. Good number of you have voted so far. I can see we've got a lot of people down from the southeast coast and south central. Seems to be a very popular area. I can see quite a number of first responders, which is how I expected tonight to be, and lots of people with a range of experience in events. I think it's most popular that people have been working on large outdoor events. The audience kind, again, that's not a particular surprise. That's exactly who we've aimed at tonight. Manchester, for those who want to know, it's a bit cloudy today. It's not very good. If you're from down south, please tell me we've got better weather, because I'm going to be down there in the next few days. So thank you to the 3/4 of you who voted. We're just going to stop that there. And as you know, all of our webinars are free of charge. So we do like to use this opportunity to plug and let you know about what training courses we have coming up. You can visit our website. Admin team will just be giving you the link in the chat, so you can see all the details about our courses, any required reading, anything you need to do. It breaks down the spec into a much easier way. If you're doing a FREC 3 or FREC 4 course with anybody else, feel free to use and abuse our website, because we find that the information presented is nice and clear, and actually, once people have had a read, they actually understand a lot more about FREC 3 and FREC 4. So our next FREC 3 will be on the 29th of August. We run those over weekends. So it's 29th and 30th. It's the first weekend in September and the following Saturday. We also include a level 3 award in administering medical gases, which gives you the ability to use oxygen. And that is £325 plus your VAT. It's running from a training centre near Aylesbury. And we also include a copy of Ambulance Care Essentials, which you get to take home and keep. You also get access to your JR Calc and other books whilst you're doing your studying. Our next FREC 4 will be starting on the 3rd of October. Again, that's a weekend course, but the weekends are broken up in this instance because you have some workbooks to do alongside your classroom study. So we just make sure you have plenty of time where you can take the books home, consolidate your knowledge and draft your workbooks, and then our tutors can give you a little bit of feedback and make sure you're getting them absolutely spot on before you pass that course. That course is £395 plus the VAT. And it includes a copy of Ambulance Care Practice, so you can see you're stepping up your knowledge there. And if you already hold your FREC 4 for your healthcare professional and you need to re-qualify in immediate life support, we run those courses roughly once every 2 months, £125 plus VAT, and we give you a copy of the Resus Council UK's ILS book. That course is next running on the 20th September. And for those of you who do have FREC 4 and would like to do the Safe Administration of Life-Saving Medications course, we're running that near Aylesbury on the weekend of the 26th and 27th of September. You'll get your JR Calc pocketbook for that, and it's £165 plus VAT. So do visit our website and have a look and have a book. Just to make you aware that we do have a little code of conduct in place for our webinars. We do believe that everybody has the right to a space free from bullying, intimidation, harassment. We'd like to ensure that everybody is treated with dignity, respect and courtesy and not be discriminated against. So whilst we will have lots of discussion in the chat and people may disagree with one another's point of view, and we absolutely do encourage that kind of healthy debate, just make sure you keep it professional and respectful from everybody. So tonight we are looking at interacting with other services at events. So we're going to be looking at the role of the event liaison team. We're going to look at who makes them up and what they actually do. We're going to be looking at event production and technical production, because I've heard it on many events where they say, oh, production do that, or go and speak to someone on production. But actually, there's two different groups of production, and it's worthwhile knowing the difference between the two so you can figure out who you're actually supposed to be talking to. We're going to look at the different kinds of site services, because again, when you have problems on site, a lot of people just say, oh yeah, go and see site services, they'll fix that. But again, that's quite broken down into a few different areas. Security and stewarding. If you're not familiar with events, or if you've not worked in the security industry before, you might not be sure on the differences between the two and what the kind of remits of the two are. So we're going to have a little look at that. We're going to look particularly at how security and stewarding can be used in support of the medical providers. Following on from that, we're going to be looking at working together in the stage pit area, which is a very busy environment with a lot of professionals, all who have a lot of different jobs to do. So we're going to look at what the medical roles are and how they interact with everybody. We'll touch on the role of event fire services and see what their role is and how that might be slightly different to the County Fire and Rescue Service and their different capabilities. And again, how they'll be deployed in support of the event medical team. And then lastly, we're going to be reviewing the role of event control, who kind of makes up event control, where they might be based and what the function is. If you do have any questions as we go throughout this evening, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I will try and spot anything that I see and answer it if it fits in with the slide. If not, I will review everything at the end and we will be going over all the questions. We do like questions. Last week we had about half hour of Q&A. If we have half hour tonight, that'll be excellent. If it's down to 5 minutes, that's fine. The only stupid question is the question you don't ask, so don't be shy. Now we're just going to have a little look at the incident command structure. So we're just going to throw up a quick poll and we're going to see who can remember anything from our previous webinars or any previous training you've done. So we've got the gold, silver, bronze incident command structure. So which level is tactical? Is it gold, is it silver, or is it bronze? And is a bronze commander responsible for the operations, the tactics, or the strategy? So if you all have a quick go at voting, let me know what you think. Let's see what experience people have got. And if you were in a previous webinar, let's see how much you've remembered. Really fantastic to see so many of you responding to those questions straight away. I can see that around about 70% of you have came across these terms before and know what they mean, but for those of you who haven't, don't worry, we are going to go through them and have a little recap. So we're just going to pause that polling there, and the command level for tactical would be the silver command level, and a bronze commander is responsible for the operations. So well done to everybody who got those questions correct. If you didn't, let's have a little bit look in more detail. So first of all, a gold commander is very strategic. They set the overarching strategy for how things will happen. And quite often, especially in emergency situations, they'll be based off-site. On an event, they may well be based on-site, but not within the operational or tactical areas. They will be in their own little bubble somewhere. Silver Commander is very tactical, so they will be on site. They will know exactly what's going on, but they won't be on the ground. So they're not going to be stood in the middle of the incident. They're going to be slightly offset from the incident, and they're going to coordinate the approach. So they're going to listen to the strategy that's set by Gold. They're going to look at what's happening around them, and they're going to develop some tactics as to how that strategy can be realized on the ground. And then the lowest level of command and decision making is the bronze level, and they're very operational. So they're on the ground, they're in the middle of the incident, they know exactly what's going on around them, they know exactly who is doing what, where, when, how. And what they do is they listen to the tactics that Silver have got, and then they will implement those plans using the staff and the resources that are available to them. And then underneath your bronze commanders, you would have your supervisors, your team leaders, your crew managers, who will be listening to those operational plans, and they will be carrying out those plans. They'll be using their individual staff members that make up their team or their crew, and they will do, basically. As you say, there's the crews. So we're going to look at the event liaison team. I just need to check to see if I've got any more questions. No, we don't. That's good. So the event liaison team almost follows the gold, silver, and bronze structure. So your promoters would be seen to be at gold level, and they're the senior representatives from the organisations who hold the financial risk of an event. So in the case of Reading and Leeds, for example, that would be Festival Republic. They're the ones who have stumped up all of the money to pay for all of the production and all of the safety services and everything else that's needed, all of the artists, and they're the ones who will stand to make any money from the ticket sales. However, they're not specialists in everything. They are there, they are setting the scene, they are deciding what the event is and how they want that event to be delivered. They'll let everybody else go into detail. The other person who might operate at a strategic level is the overall event production manager. So they are the person who's in charge of event operations. So they won't necessarily have decision making in terms of who's on stage or when they're on stage, but in terms of everything that's not actually an artist performance, the production manager is pretty much where the buck stops. We're medics, so we're obviously next most important. So the medical provider will have a silver commander, and that's usually the person who has the title of medical coordinator. And they'll sit on the event liaison team along with their colleagues. So a security provider could be the security manager. So if it's one particular security firm, it'll be a manager within that. But if there's more than one security firm, then what often happens is a third-party security manager will be appointed to oversee the security operation as a whole. And it'll be that security manager who is the security silver. If there's on-site fire provision, their equivalent of what a county fire and rescue service station manager would be the silver representative on an event liaison team. The crowd safety manager, who usually has the title of chief steward, is a silver commander as well. So quite often you'll find that security and stewarding operations might be delivered from the same organisation. However, when it comes to the event liaison team, they will have two representatives. They will have a silver security, who is purely responsible for the security and managing that side of it. And they will also have a silver chief steward who is responsible for the crowd safety element. And those two roles will be quite distinct. You also have a silver safety, so that's the health and safety manager. They're obviously responsible for the overarching health and safety across the whole site. And your site services manager is also a silver commander within the event liaison team. So they're responsible for everything that goes on. If there needs to be something that we would typically find coming into a building or a house in a town, then site services are the guys that do that. Now, the emergency services representatives are actually a bronze level command. And you tend to find them on the bigger events, the police, the county fire and rescue service, and the NHS ambulance, and they will have what we term a tokenistic presence on the event liaison team. So they will have one of their sort of middle ranking officers who will come and sit in the event control room or with their sort of similar provider, and they will attend the regular event liaison team meetings. And their role is as a liaison between that service and their control room as it runs normally and what is happening at the event. So that usually is a bronze role for each particular service. However, there is one slight exception to that, and that is the police, because the police can be contracted privately to provide what's called special policing services for an event. And where that happens, particularly if the police are deployed in larger numbers, then the police would supply a more senior officer who would be in command of the policing operation, and there would be police silver. There would also still be a police bronze who is there, who is, contacting with the police control room offsite, but that's just something to bear in mind. And what event liaison team does is they meet regularly throughout the event. So they will meet just before the gates are open for the very first time, and they will check with everybody to make sure that we're all happy, that medics, all of your first aid posts are staffed and open, all of your kits have been checked. Fire, you've got your engines, they're filled with water. Security, have you got guards on all of the gates that need to be checked? Have you got door supervisors on all the bars that are going to be opened? Crowd safety, have you got people on all the gates ready to wristband everybody? Health and safety, have all your crews reported back and signed off all of their operations? Site services, do we have running water? Is all the generators switched on? Emergency services, is there anything happening off site that's going to affect our event? And that'll be the first meeting that the event liaison team has. Throughout the event, at key points, there will be event liaison team meetings, and each one of those services will speak to their controllers and speak to their supervisors, and they will find out what is happening on the ground, and they will look for any issues, they will look for any areas of best practice, they will look for numbers on the ground, they will look for numbers of casualties, and they will feed all of this together. And then they'll share that information following the JESIP model of working together and having that shared understanding of risk, and then they will come up with a joint strategy. So it might be that the security provider has confiscated a significant amount of cocaine. That information will be relevant to us as a medical provider because it means that with the best fun in the world, security aren't going to manage to find every little packet that comes through the gate. So as a medical provider, we might be thinking, okay, we might be seeing a few people later on tonight or later on tomorrow who've had a little bit up the nostril. And that just gives us that little heads up. Likewise, the stewarding provider who are welcoming everybody in might have seen quite a few people carrying those little gas canisters and the little gas stoves. So they might want to let fire know that actually there's quite a large number of small gas canisters in pretty much every tent. So fire will be thinking, okay, if we get that, we're going to be acting really fast. And so on, that sharing of information just helps everybody understand that bigger picture. We might find that the numbers aren't all that good in the first 2 hours. So we've got a fairly quiet site, but actually that's making us think we've still got all those people who are going to come in one go. So our traffic management team, they would need to be aware that there's going to be a large number of cars turning up in a very short space of time. But that's also relevant to us as a medical provider, because rather than just having everybody inside, we now might need to put a foot patrol going around where the queues are outside, because people might be getting a little bit dehydrated or a little bit sunstroked if they're queuing for a longer period of time than they were anticipating. So these event liaison team meetings are all about everybody coming together and sharing information and setting that strategy and those tactics until the next event liaison team meeting. So now we're going to look at event production and technical production. And we've got a little photo on the screen. So I want you just to take in where that photo was taken. Have a think about where we stood. Have a think about what equipment is around us. Have a think about what's happening, where the audience is. And what I'd like to ask is, the staff identifiable in this image, do you think they're part of the event production team, or do you think they're part of the technical production crew? We'll let everybody vote on that. Okay, I can see 2/3 of you have voted there, well done. And 80% of you believe that the people that we can see are the technical production crew. So let me just jump onto annotation. So clearly we've got some lovely sound stuff on the stage. We've got a guy with a video camera there. And then we've got this guy here, who's probably the stage manager. So what we've got is we've got technical production. And technical production quite clearly are concerned with what's going on the stage. But first, let's just have a quick little look at event production. So event production are bothered about the whole event. So they want to know what's happening everywhere. So that's the arena, that's the campsites, it's the gates, it's the car parks. And it's made up of management level from most organizations. So this could be, as we've discussed, your medical manager, your security manager. It could be the manager in charge of the company that's brought all the generators in. It could be the crew boss for the guys and girls who've been moving all the fences. And they make up the overall event production team. And they're concerned with hard infrastructure. So what does the site look like? Where are the barriers? Where are the flags? Where are the marquees and the gazebos? But they're also concerned with soft services for compliance. So is our noise level acceptable? Do we need to turn it down or maybe change the direction of a speaker slightly? Are the bars operating and closing at the times that we've said they will, or are they actually risking our premises license? So event production has a number of different components to it, and that all come together. And what it's about making sure the audience have an enjoyable experience, that they're safe, and that the event runs in accordance with all of the licenses and the law. It runs in parallel with the event liaison team. So although it's comprised of some similar people, it has some different people on. And it's generally seen that event liaison team is within the event production bubble, but the event liaison team supersedes event production. So event production are kind of the people who carry out the work, but event liaison team set the scene within that. Technical production, on the other hand, is concerned with the stage. So they're concerned with the sound, the light, the video. Basically, I tried to put a sentence on this to summarize what it is. And technical production are the people who make the things happen in the arena that the audience are actually there for. So when you go to a concert, when you go to a gig, why do you go? You don't go to see how lovely and straight the fence line is. You don't go to look and make sure the fire lane's 45 meters long or whatever. You go because you want to watch a band on a stage, or you want to go and enjoy some food from some vendors. You go because you know there's a really nice craft beer bar. So technical production are the people that are making all of that happen. So quite often you'll find them running around on a stage, in the stage wings, backstage, in the pit, and in what's called front of house. Now, if you don't know what front of house is, if you look at the image, let's go into annotation again. Let's just change the color so you can see nice and clearly what I'm doing. So what you've got here, I'm just going to draw a little dividing line, is you've got a little structure. So you've got a great big S, the stage, And I'm just going to write FOH down here, and you've got crowd. Apologies for my really bad handwriting in the middle. So the stage is obviously very near the front. And then you have the crowd and the audience, which fills right the way up to the front of the stage barrier. And then at the back, in the middle, usually in the centre line of the stage, wherever it's possible to do that, you will have what's called the front of house. Now, this is usually some form of covered structure. It might just be a simple 3x3 gazebo, or it might be a 3-story scaffold structure, or it might be something else entirely. It's usually barriered on all of the sides, and it is where you would put the mixing desk for the sound. It's where you would put the lighting desk for the lighting operators, and possibly a couple of other technical services, because they need to know what it's like for the audience. So they need to see the stage as the audience sees it. They need to hear the music as the audience hears it, so that they can just tweak everything and make it the best it possibly can be. One thing to note about front of the house is that even if the crowd is quite dense in front of it and to the side of it, behind front of the house, there is almost always a very wide gap in the crowd, because you can't see the stage from behind it. So if you're looking, for example, for an area where you can take a casualty and you're in the middle of the audience or just in front of this front of house area, the best thing to do would be to get them behind it. You might find a couple of other people chilling there, but this is where you will find people. And this is where technical production come in really handy. As you can see in this room, it is an indoor venue. It's quite dark. And if you've got a casualty, let's just put a little marker on. So let's say you've got a casualty here and you don't quite know what's going on with them, and you've not got a torch with you, you've only got your pen torch, you can't really see what's going on. You could, in a pair, one of you could just nip over to the front of the house and go, can you give me some light? And I can almost guarantee you in an indoor venue, they will have a light that they can spotlight on you. But I've also worked on some outdoor greenfield festivals, and we've had reports of patients collapsed in the crowd. I've just ran over to the front of house and gone, give me crowd lights. We think someone's collapsed. And they will literally throw up all of the front of the stage crowd lights, and you will see this lovely yellow kind of glow across everybody's head. And that's enough time for me to jump onto some scaffold or a piece of barrier, and I'll just look. And as long as I can see a row of heads without any gaps, I'm all good. If I can see a little circle, that's where I need to be, because that's where the unconscious person will be. Once I've done that, thank you very much. Really appreciate your help. Remembering to be polite, remembering to thank everybody. And on away I go. If all of a sudden I leap off that barrier and start sprinting, you can almost guarantee that person who's turned the lights on is going to watch where I'm going, and he's going to then start shutting down all the lights except the ones that I need and letting everything get back to normal. Technical production can be absolutely amazing depending on where you're working. If you've got incidents in the pit and your pit's not very well lit, get somebody from stage management on the radio to the lighting operator, and you will guaranteedly have a couple of those moving headlights from the front of the stage rail pointed right down at you, and you'll be able to see everything that's going on without needing any torches. Likewise, if you've got a casualty that you cannot get moved from in front of the speakers, tell them which speaker it is. They'll press a couple of buttons and all of a sudden you'll not have bass right next to where you're stood. These guys can work absolute wonders. It's worth saying hello, introducing yourself. If you're the medic that's going to be based at front of the house or based by the side of the stage, introduce yourself. You know, hi, I'm Matt, I'm one of the medics, I'm going to be based here. How are you doing? Yeah. Oh, you've got a kettle. Do you mind if I bring my cup down? Oh, fantastic, lovely. Yeah, I'll make you a brew if you're busy. Likewise, if you might have your defib there, you might have your carry chair, you might have your oxygen, your Entanox, you might have a longboard, you might have a big response bag. Guys, we're going to be based here. Do you mind if we chuck some bags in the back of your tent to keep them dry? Yeah, no worries. We're just going to chuck our chair underneath your little elevation. I've forgotten what it's called now. Piece of staging, whatever it is. Ask them. Chances are they'll say yes. That means you're not needing to carry every piece of equipment to every job. You can leave stuff stashed. You know where it is. You know where you can tell stewards to go and get it for you. So we're just going to clear that one down and have a look at our next slide. So, site services. Site services do a number of different things. As I said, if it comes into a building in a city, then site services will do the same on an outdoor event. So you'll have your power people, and they will deal with generators, they will deal with distribution, they will deal with lighting, and they will deal with fuel. So your generators are obviously what makes your power. Your distribution is how the power gets from the generators to where you need it. Now, if you're running an outdoor medical centre or first aid post, you might well want some power. So find out who's in charge of power in your area, because they will prioritise medical. If there's a power loss to anywhere on site, they will go and deal with it. If there's a power loss to several areas on site, but the first aid post is one of them, they will go to the first aid post first and sort everybody else. And it doesn't even matter if a stage goes down. If a medical centre's gone down as well as a stage, they will go and get the medical centre sorted first, and then they will go to the stage, because they know that what we do is saving people's lives. Likewise for lighting, if you don't think it's bright enough, talk to them. They will magically find a lighting tower, or they will reposition something, or they will get another floodlight and put it in your marquee. You know, these are the go-to guys that will make your life a lot easier. And fuel. They are easily the team on site that consumes the most fuel, and they will make arrangements for everything to be topped up, and they will probably be going around every morning refilling all of their generator supplies. So if you're running buggies on for your ambulances on site, if you're running the 4x4 buggies, or you've got some quads, for example, rather than you needing to go off site and bring in various bits of fuel, if you know who your power supplier is in advance, you can have a little chat with them, say, right, if we log what fuel we're using, can we just pay you? 9 times out of 10, they're going to turn around and go, yeah, that's absolutely fine, not a problem. And that's going to be available. We've also got water. So potable water is the kind of water that we can drink. And distribution, so on your larger sites, you'll have lots of blue pipes running all over the place, and that's how we're getting the water from its storage tank into the taps where the audience can collect it. Medical centres, obviously, we generally need a supply of running water near us, or there will be some kind of IBC or Bowser. It's worth knowing who's in charge of that. They're also in charge of collecting and removing it, because wherever we supply water, it's not just going to evaporate quickly enough. It will pool, it will make places muddy. So they'll have various ways and means of collecting it, sucking it up. They're also good people who might know who has the wood chip, because they've probably already made a mess and needed to call in that favour. So if you need a supply of running water, if yours is running a bit low, speak to these guys, they'll help you out. There's also your sanitation team. These are really, really important people to keep on the good side of. Most medical centres have their own dedicated toilets. Speak to sanitation nicely, and they'll be serviced morning, noon, and night instead of just one of those. They also look after the showers, and they will service things like that. So they're the ones who keep you clean and give you somewhere private to read your newspaper. The cleaners will deal with the litter. They will do litter picking in the arena. They will take away rubbish, collect waste, and they'll have attendants. They have attendants that look after the toilets, so give them a spray down. Especially in today's situation with COVID-19, we tend to find there's a lot more toilet attendants and a lot more cleaners than in the past. So again, good people to get to know. They're keeping the public safe, so by extension, they're helping us do our job. You also have the plant team, so these are the people who can drive the forklift trucks, the telehandlers, the tractors. They'll have buggies, and they'll have another supply of fuel. Again, good people to get to know. If it gets a little bit too muddy and your buggies are struggling, you can guarantee you that these guys won't struggle. They will have something that can do the job. Likewise, if all of your buggies are busy, but you've got yet another patient that needs to be transported, if you happen to see them nearby, or you've already made friends with one and can call in a favour, you will magically find a buggy appears by your side, and they will find a way of getting the patient into it, onto it, and otherwise. And then you've got your general crew. So these are the people that lift, carry, they will make fences and barriers, they will move fences and barriers. So if your medical post is getting a little bit overwhelmed with fences, with barriers, they will put some more barriers in front of your first aid post for you. They're really, really good. So we're going to look at security and stewarding. So the security side is regulated by the Private Security Industry Act 2001 as amended. And you have various different licenses. So your blue security license, the one on the top, that is for manned guarding. You also have security consultants who are licensed as well. You have key holders. Now, key holders is not incidental key holding. So if you happen to have the key to your porta cabin where you're providing a first aid post and you're a medic, you're not key holding. That's incidental to your role. However, if your event security team is given the keys to all of the porta cabins and buggies and everybody is signing them in and out from there, they are key holding because that's not incidental. They're not driving the plant. They're not operating out of every single container. They are holding the keys on behalf of somebody else, so they need to be appropriately licensed for that. And then door supervisors. Now, the legal words are in relation to licensed premises at times when those premises are open to the public is when you would require a door supervisor license. And the one that everybody misses is section 3, part E. And that is if a person acts as the manager or supervisor of individuals who are required in accordance with any such directions to engage in conduct which will be licensable conduct, and that licensable conduct is defined in Schedule 2 of the Private Security Industry Act, they must also hold a license. Now, you can hold a non-frontline license, which basically means you don't provide that licensable conduct, you don't engage in licensable conduct yourself, but you manage or supervise somebody who does. The other licenses are your CCTV license, and that's for public space CCTV surveillance. So these are the people in the event control room who will move the cameras around, look after the audience. They will spot those gaps emerging and zoom in to see if there's anybody collapsed. If you get a medical call, they're the people who will try and find that particular area on the site and see what's going on. If you're going into a situation where there's been a fight, they're the people who will be covering your back and making sure that everybody is there. You've got your CDIT license, which stands for Cash and Valuables in Transit. So they're the people who will visit the site at usually, shall we say, unknown times. They are obviously known to a very small group of people, but they will turn up via an undisclosed route and they will collect all of the large bags of money and whisk it away somewhere safe. The Vehicle Immobiliser license no longer exists in Great Britain. The Close Protection license, you might interact with close protection operators if you are called to deal with an artist or a VIP. They might have their own security. So close protection is the guarding of a person, an individual, or valuables that are on or about that person. And then the license you can't see is the door supervisor license. Now, what security are there for? They are there to secure premises. They are there to secure property. They are there to protect. They are there to make sure that people don't invade the stage. They are there to make sure that people don't get into places where they're not supposed to get. They are there to prevent crime and disorder, promote public safety, protect children from harm, and everything else that is a licensing objective or otherwise listed in the operating schedule for the premises. Now, that public safety bit is where we can make use of them. So if we've got a little bit of a situation where we've got a little bit of a crowd and we're trying to treat a casualty, then we can ask security to come and protect us. If we've got a lot of valuable equipment in the medical centre and it's a little bit unruly, we can ask for security to be positioned to make sure that people aren't pilfering. If we have a busy situation at the front door and we decide that we don't want any friends or relatives inside, then we can ask for a security operator to come and stand at our front door and make sure people don't get into a space where we don't want them to. So we're just going to review a little bit of knowledge on security there. Let's just press a little button and make a poll appear, see if I can remember what the question is. So our first question is: a person who's guarding the technical equipment on stage overnight an outdoor music festival with no camping requires what kind of license? Will that be a security license, a CCTV license, a cash and valuables and transit license, a close protection license, or a door supervisor license? Question 2 is: a person who is only there to manage door supervisors but doesn't engage in licensable conduct themselves requires what? Is it no license at all, a non-frontline license, or a frontline license? And question 3 is: a person whose role is to uphold public safety and prevent crime and disorder at a festival bar requires which license? Is that a security license, a CCTV license, a cash and valuables in transit license, a close protection license, or a door supervisor license? Now, for any of you who are intimately familiar with SIA guidelines, what I'm after is the minimum level of license required. So we've got about a third of you voted so far. I'm just going to give you a few more seconds, have a little bit of think about what we've been discussing. Okay, we're coming up to 2/3 of you having voted there. I can see question 2 is a little bit confusing to people, so I'm just going to go back over that. Questions 1 and 3, I can see 80% of you roughly are getting that right, so well done there. Let's just stop polling. So question 1, if a person is guarding the technical equipment on stage overnight at an outdoor music festival with no camping, what license do they require? So the outdoor music festival, they're providing regulated entertainment, which is a licensable activity. However, there's no camping and they're only guarding overnight. So the premises are not open to the public. So therefore they don't need a door supervisor license. They simply require a security license. That equipment's not going anywhere, so that's why they don't need transit. And although they might be stood next to it, it's not close protection because there's no people there protecting. Question 3, a person whose role it is to uphold public safety and prevent crime and disorder at a festival bar requires which license? So a bar is the retail sale of alcohol. That's a licensable activity right there. And if they're preventing crime and disorder and upholding public safety, then we can assume the public are on site, and therefore that is a door supervisor license automatically. Now, question 2, the one that caused most division between people, is if a person is there to manage door supervisors, but they're not going to engage in licensable conduct themselves, what do they require? So the Private Security Industry Act 2001, Section 3, Part E, says if a person acts as the manager or supervisor of individuals who are required in accordance with their directions to engage in conduct which will be scheduled to licensable conduct, they must hold a license. So that means it can't be no license. And then what I said is if that person doesn't engage in licensable conduct themselves, they don't have to have a frontline license. So a frontline license is only needed by the person who has their own license. A non-frontline license, absolutely fine in that instance. So let's look now at stewarding. So stewards, a lot of people think are kind of unlicensed security, and that's not true because stewards have their own role and remit, and they're there to manage crowd dynamics. They're there to monitor crowds, and they are the eyes and the ears of the event control room. The first sign of anything going wrong is going to be noticed by a steward. They are going to report that in, and by having that reported in, the medical controller has time to tell the medical commander. The medical commander then has that little bit of time to set their tactics and decide how they're going to respond to that. Stewards will also conduct pre-event safety checks. So they'll be thinking as a customer, what would I do? They'll be going into all of those areas, thinking about what customers would do to them, and they'll be looking to make sure that everything is safe before we open the doors. The most important role of any steward is to assist the audience. So they'll know the layout of the site and they'll be giving information about any available facilities, for example, the toilets, welfare, concessions, and of course us as the first aid provider. So a good steward will know where the first aid points are, and if somebody comes up to them and is walking and says they need a medic, they will tell them to carry on walking and point them where they should be. Obviously, if that person's a little bit lost and confused, they might well walk with them to make sure they get to us. But a really good quality steward will reduce the number of call-outs that we have because they will be directing everybody to us. They will also staff entrances, exits, and other strategic points that are not continuously secured in the open position while the event is in progress, because if they need to be opened or closed, there needs to be somebody there who will do that. They also control and direct the audience members who are entering or leaving an event, and they're trying to achieve an even flow of people into and from the various parts of the event site. Now, again, that's something that is very useful to us. If we've got a little situation where we're trying to treat somebody at the side of a path and we need a little bit more space, then we'll be looking for assistance from a crowd safety steward or a crowd management steward to perhaps create us that little bit of space. It might be that actually we've got 3 people who are really struggling and need a little bit more space. So stewards might be deployed to each end of the path, and they'll be telling people which way round to go to get to where they're trying to go without needing to come through where we're trying to work. They also recognise crowd conditions, and they ensure the safe dispersal of the audience and prevent overcrowding. Now, again, that's really important to us, because if they don't do their job, then what we end up with is crowd crushers, and that's a lot of hard work for us. They'll also investigate incidents. So if there's a possible safety incident, there are more stewards on the ground than any other kind of crew. So they will be the first people who go to any reports. Person collapsed. Yes, we will be sent, but a stewarding team, which is much closer than our responders, will also be sent. That helps us tremendously, because if they find that person before we do, who might be on the ground and hidden by the crowd or hidden by the front of the house or hidden by a concession, they can stand near it, they can take their high vis off, they can wave it around in the air, and then when we see them, they will cross their arms above their head. The universal event and festival sign for medical is crossed arms. If you're holding a high vis, so you're waving your high vis, you grab the high vis at both ends, cross your arms. So at night, we are looking for a horizontal high vis. That's what tells us that's where we're needed. They will then either point, or they will run with us or walk with us and get us exactly that patient who they know exactly where it is. They're also there to respond to emergencies, so they will know intimately the arrangements for audience evacuation, any specific duties that they need to do, and they will be communicating and coordinating with the event control centre. And again, they need to be doing that job properly, because what we don't want is a load of people to get in our way. We want people to be going away from an emergency, but also if we've not necessarily found out ourselves as people on the ground what's going on, chances are if we ask a steward, they will be able to tell us a little bit more, and we'll go, oh, we need to follow our procedures and get back to the medical centre, because it might be that our radio batteries just died. So stewards are the source of information in an emergency. So let's just have a little look at some questions about stewarding. Let's just make sure I've covered all of those points. A couple of other things that stewards do. In terms of the entry and exit gates, stewards are the people who will quite often check people's tickets, apply wristbands. So they are well within their rights. If somebody doesn't have a valid ticket or whose ticket comes up as invalid, they are perfectly within their rights to stop that person from coming into the event, quite obviously. And you know, they can be backed up by security if that person becomes aggressive and needs any kind of physical reminders. But they're well within their rights to prevent a person accessing the event who don't hold a ticket. And there are some qualifications for stewards. So in terms of stadiums, you have the level 2 award in understanding stewarding in spectator events, and there are higher levels available as well. But there aren't really many qualifications for your outdoor greenfield events. So what you tend to find is a lot of crowd safety stewards don't hold any kind of crowd safety or crowd management qualifications, simply because they don't exist. So 3 true or false questions. Question 1, a crowd safety steward can prevent a person accessing an event site without a ticket. Question 2, crowd safety stewards can be used to redirect the audience away from the scene of an incident. Question 3, all crowd safety stewards must hold an appropriate qualification. So true or false for each of those questions. I'm going to give you a minute to vote on those. Okay, that was really quick to get up to 2/3, really impressed. I see a few more people still voting, so let's give you another few seconds. Okay, well done everybody. So question 1, a crowd safety steward can prevent a person accessing an event site without a ticket is true. They're well within their rights. If somebody doesn't have a ticket to say, sorry sir, can't come in today, and that person walks away, it's all well and good. It is only the point at which somebody would need to go hands-on and physically intervene that you will be looking for an appropriately licensed security officer or door supervisor. Question 2, crowd safety stewards can be used to redirect the audience away from the scene of an incident. Well done, 100% of respondents for saying that was true. That is possibly the single most useful thing that a steward will do to help an event medical provider. And question 3, all crowd safety stewards must hold an appropriate qualification, is false, and that by and large is because such qualifications don't exist. So just going to show you one more thing, which is what we call the dim ice model for normal and emergency situations for crowd management. So what stewards do isn't just something that magically happens. What stewards do is something that is deliberately planned and thought about in advance. So the ingress, the entry to the event is the design. It's, what can people, how wide is it? Is it wide enough to prevent people getting crushed? Information, can people see the sign that says entry? And management, who's there doing it? Now for us, this matters because we generally fall under circulation information. So as people are circulating and moving around the event site, do they have the information they need to find what they're looking for? So as an event medical provider, we need to make sure we've got a great big sign that says first aid, because if that's visible, people can see us and that reduces the number of problems that we have. So stage pit area, apologies for the poor quality image. I wanted something that could kind of show the layout like this. And the stage pit is a very busy working area. The raised platform that you can see just beside the barrier, let me just put annotations on. So this raised platform area here provides a safer working area near the barrier. So as a medical provider, we probably aren't going to be getting involved in extrications ourselves, but we might well be stood up on that barrier because there may be a casualty being brought over by the crowd safety team, and we would need to be ready to receive them. Now, it is a working area, and as you can also see by, where's my color change? By these here and here and all the way along, they are speakers. They are bass speakers. They are very loud bass speakers. And in line with legislation, as employees, we may need to use hearing protection. So if it's been determined that those speakers are going to be above 80 decibels over the course of a day on average, then our employer must provide us with hearing protection. If it's over 85 decibels, A-weighted, averaged across the whole day, then as well as the employer providing them, we must wear them. So that's not an if, but maybe. If there is a sign saying mandatory hearing protection must be worn past this point, it's not a if you want to, it's a you must wear it. And if it gets above 87 decibels averaged across the day, or a peak pressure limit of 140 decibels C-weighted, then the noise has to be reduced. Now that can be by wearing ear protection, or it can be by turning it down, or it can be by some other means, but you cannot legally be exposed to noise above that level. So if you are part of the team that is going to be based near the stage pit, please be aware of your own hearing protection. You've only got 2 ears. They are there to last you a whole lifetime. Don't ruin them in 5 minutes in a stage pit by not wearing your hearing protection. Let's get rid of those animations there. So the most important people that work in the stage pit are the stewarding and crowd safety team. So they are going to be monitoring crowd. They're going to be dealing with extrications over the barrier. There should also be a water supply, usually some kind of standpipe or tap and some disposable cups, or it might be some bottles. And they're going to be keeping those who are near the front. And the best practice is the first 6 rows of the audience need to be kept hydrated from the team in the pit. There'll also be one person, usually the person with stage supervisor or stage manager, who will be the spotter. So they'll be stood off to one side, probably on the raised platform. They'll be watching over the crowd, looking for any kind of abnormal gaps emerging, looking for any abnormal areas of people getting close together, looking for any kind of swaying, any movement that they don't really expect. And if there's any problems, they're going to escalate straight away, and they're going to make sure that actions are taken to prevent that small little thing that they spotted from becoming a major issue. That would mean we have to get involved. You then also have your security staff. Now, your security staff fundamentally are there to protect the stage infrastructure and prevent unauthorised persons from accessing the stage itself. And this can come from two different ways. You can have people who are deliberately crowd surfed over the barrier, who are there maliciously to try and get over the barrier and get onto the stage. And obviously we don't want that to be happening. But also, people might be lifted over for their own safety, but once they're over and all of a sudden feeling fine, they might suddenly make a bolt for it and take advantage of the opportunity as well. The other reason security will be found in the pit is because certain performers and artists do like to jump down from the stage and perform in the pit, right on the barrier and wave to the audience. And some indeed also like to be crowd surfed and go around the audience. Again, security are there to make sure that that person comes back over the barrier into relative safety and the crowd doesn't suddenly decide to take possession of that artist. You have technical production, so your sound, video and lighting team may need to be in the pit because there may be some extra cables that they need to run across the front of the stage ready for the next act. They may need to view the stage from what it's like for that audience member who's right up against the barrier. They may also have the sound meters because they'll be checking that the noise exposure is within the limits that it needs to be so that the medical team, the crowd safety team and everybody else aren't being exposed to noise that's too loud. But what's really important is that their presence and any equipment must not interfere with the crowd safety operation. So if they are there, they are secondary importance. They are there by invitation, essentially. If we're busy doing something and we need them to move, they just need to get out of the way. Top and bottom, no if, no but, off you go. And to be fair, they know that and they'll respect that. If they're working in a pit, they've probably worked in pits before and know the drill. Sometimes you will have some video cameras in the pit, but they'll usually be barriered off to keep them safe, and there shouldn't be anywhere that would interfere with us needing to get through with a stretcher or any other piece of equipment. You might also have the press and the media, particularly for the first 3 songs of any artist. The general rule is first 3 songs, no flash for any press and media. You'll usually see them clustered in the centre, usually right up against the speakers or right up against the barrier, one or the other. You never find them in the middle. But again, they should know, they tend to forget. But if we do have a crowd safety situation, if we are getting somebody over the barrier who's passed out or who's having a fit or otherwise, they need to disappear and quick. You know, if they don't, find your lovely friendly security or crowd safety person and tell them to make them move. I've personally been in a situation a number of years ago as a photographer in a main stage pit, and out the corner of my eye, I've spotted somebody having a seizure in a crowd. My camera's gone on the floor, I've grabbed the spotter, pointing them out. They've gone straight on the barrier. I've sent someone to go and get the medics. Meanwhile, I've got my hands helping get this person over, get them onto the deck, and I've got them on the side as the medical teams ran up to me. Because I did that as a photographer, the rest of the photographers realised, you know, oh shit, this is serious. Every single one of them went against the speakers, knelt down, put their cameras on the floor and waited. And they waited until I had picked up my camera. Out of respect for the fact that as a photographer, I had stopped what I was doing because something more important was happening. They waited until I was ready to restart. So you do get some really good people who absolutely understand. They understand that they're not in a position to help, but they will do what they can to keep out of your way. But you will also get some photographers that will either try to carry on getting their photos, or worse still, will turn their camera around to the casualty. Chances are if they do that, they might find their access is withdrawn for the rest of the event, as long as you catch who it was. Again, this is why making friends with security can be really useful. Then there's us. Now, we're quite low down the chain because actually we don't need to go in the pit all that often. It's a privilege for us to be there because it's a really great view of the stage. And hopefully we don't have many casualties. So we will either be located stage right or stage left. And just a word of warning, if you've not worked on an event, when we give directions relative to a stage, we say stage right and we say stage left. And this is from the perspective of the performer stood on the stage facing the audience. So as we look at this image, and let's put annotations back on, make this nice and easy for ourselves. So this direction here is stage left, and this direction here is stage right. And that's because if I'm stood on the stage and I'm facing the audience, to my left is stage left, and to my right is stage right. The audience are what we call the house. So house left, the audience facing the stage, is the same as stage right. And house right, the audience is facing the stage, the house, would be the same as stage left. So if you are giving directions, i.e. I have a casualty stage left, if you are coming to assist from the audience, you would want to be at the extreme right-hand side, going to the gate at the right of the stage as you are walking towards it. So just bear in mind, because that does get confusing, especially if you've not been on events in a while or you've not been on events before. Ask someone to remind you if you're unsure, of course. The next thing that we also have is we'll have a medical point. So especially on the larger posts, on the larger stages, we should be equipped. And we will need to be equipped with several things. So a small treatment area that can provide up to immediate life support. So things like oxygen, things like a cardiac monitor. If you've got a paramedic there, paramedics should have their drugs and fluids available. We'd want advanced airways, supraglottic airways, OPs, MPs, suction to be available. We'd want some immobilization equipment, so an orthopedic stretcher perhaps to be available as well. We'd probably also want some kind of conventional stretcher to be able to get people moved quickly and easily. But that post will need to be shielded from view. We can't just have it at the end of the stage pit where everybody can see. It needs to be in some kind of structure and preferably behind the fence line at the edge of the stage so that nobody can see what's going on, because obviously that person's came over the barrier. A lot of people have already seen who it is, so what we're doing they don't need to see. So we need to just be a bit mindful about that privacy and dignity if we are treating in those areas. And again, at the busier events, then we need to make sure that one medic who is allocated to the stage pit area is assigned the role of spotter, and they're going to be looking for that person who's a little bit dehydrated. They're going to be looking for the person who is perhaps a little bit sunburnt, a little bit heat struck, or who might be showing the signs of about to go into a seizure, because we can then highlight that to the crowd safety team and get them to extricate them before they descend into unconsciousness. If we can intervene early while they're still able to help themselves get over the barrier, it does make it a lot easier. It's also really important to be consistent. So if on the main stage, our first aid post is stage left, then on the second stage, our first aid post should be stage left. And on every other stage on site, our first aid post should be stage left. And the reason we want that consistency is because if we're told we're going to a stage to deal with something, we know which side of that stage we need to be aiming for. We don't want to go, hang on, the pyramid stage, did we put the medical on stage right or stage left? Hang on, which road do I need to drive the ambulance down? Hang on, let's get the book. Meanwhile, that patient is deteriorating. So if we have that consistent approach across site, we know on every site, the first aid is stage left of any stage. Right, I know the stage left road to that main stage is that way. That's the way I'm going to drive. The less decision making, the quicker we can respond. Now, I'm going to go back to what I said at the beginning. The stage pit area is a working area. People with AAA passes, even though it means access all areas, should not and are not permitted to loiter. So if you're on your break and you happen to be in the arena and you have your access all areas pass, do not go into the stage pit and loiter and watch your favourite band. You will make a fool of yourself, and if you're working for ProMed, you will also not be working on that event or any future events. I make no apologies for that because it's a working area, and the first aid teams that are in the stage know how important it is to have that area completely clear of hangers on, because when you do have some jobs go off, you need all the space you can get. So just going to go back, remembering that we've got some questions, check your understanding there. So question 1, which of the following groups of people should be asked to leave the stage pit area? SIA licensed security staff, the bar manager, crowd safety stewards, the fire safety officer, members of the next band on stage, or emergency medical technicians? Question 2, in relation to hearing protection, which statement is true of a stage pit with daily sound levels above 85 decibels, A-weighted, averaged across a whole day? Is it hearing protection may be provided by the employer and an employee may choose to wear it? Is it if hearing protection is provided by the employer, the employee must wear it? Is it hearing protection must be provided by the employer, but an employee may choose to wear it? Is it hearing protection must be provided by the employer and an employee must wear it? And is it that the sound level must be reduced below this level before people are allowed to enter the pit? Going to give you about a minute to go through those questions, just to think back about what we've been discussing, see if you can remember it all. Come up to half of you voted there, so if you've not had a go, just have a little go at the questions. Okay, almost at 2/3 of you now, so I can see some really good answers coming in from a few people there. And we're going to stop the polling now. So let's just go through them. SIA licensed security staff, generally speaking, will have a legitimate need to be in the stage pit area. So assuming they're the ones who are supposed to be there, protecting the stage, protecting the artist, they're absolutely fine. The bar manager has absolutely no reason to be in the front of the stage pit. There is not, has never been, and will never be a bar in the front of the stage pit area. Crowd safety stewards, nobody said we need to get rid of them. Well done, they are very important to have there. The fire safety officer, by and large, needs to be asked to leave the stage pit area, because unless there is a fire or the arena is closed down and he's doing his checks out of hours, there's no reason for him to be there. There shouldn't be a fire in that area, because whilst there's electricity, there's very little fire load, and there are fire extinguishers, but they'll have been checked that morning. So there's no real need for a fire officer to be there during a performance. Members of the next band on stage absolutely do not need to be in the stage pit area. They can disappear, they can watch from their allocated viewing area. And emergency medical technicians do, if they are part of the stage medical team, have a legitimate need to be there. Question 2, in relation to hearing protection, which statement is true of a stage pit with sound levels above 85 decibels A-weighted averaged across a day? And 3/4 of you got that right. Hearing protection provided by the employer is a must, and the employee must wear it. So well done there. So our event fire services, let's have a little look and see what they're going to be doing. So first of all, as you can see from the image, they have specialist vehicle capabilities. So nearest to furthest, what we've got is we've got a buggy, and it looks like on the back of that buggy is a very small pump, so it can pump water. It'll connect into the site water supply from a tap or otherwise, and it's probably got a small hose reel on there as well, so it can be used. You've also got a fire extinguisher attached to the front as well, so it can rapidly get anywhere on site and start the process. The second vehicle you've got is a conventional 4x4 pickup. Chances are in the back of that will be a water tank, a fogging machine, so it can deal with a fire for a small amount of time. Being a conventional pickup, it can get to a lot of areas that a 4x4 can get to, and it won't be too heavy. The third vehicle you can see is a 4x4 fire appliance. So it's got your little roller shutter doors, so it's got rescue equipment in there. It'll have first aid equipment in there. You can see some ladders and some beakers on the top there, some rakes. It will also have some form of water fogging machine available as well. The third is a conventional transit van, so that's basically a personnel moving vehicle, not 4x4 capable, so not very good in the mud. And then lastly, you've got your conventional pump, possibly a pump ladder. If it's the only appliance on an event, it probably will be a pump ladder with a 13.5 meter ladder. If it's a second appliance, it might not have such a long reach ladder. That's got all your standard equipment that you would expect to find on your county fire appliance that responds from your local fire station. So it'll have rescue equipment, it'll have your selection of ladders, it will have selection of fire extinguishers, it'll have foam, it'll have a large water tank. The pros are it'll be able to spend a long time putting out a fire. The cons are if it ain't on trackway, it's going to get stuck. And that's why you have the range of specialist vehicles. So your rent fire services provide your portable fire fighting equipment. So they will go out before the event opens. They will put some foam, some powder, some CO2 fire extinguishers, or wherever there is a fire risk, and on strategic fire points within the arena and in the campsites. They will also conduct fire safety checks. So they'll be speaking to the food concessions, the caterers, the stage providers, the pyrotechnic people. They'll be making sure that everybody's fire extinguishers are in date and checked. They'll be making sure that any carbon monoxide detectors are there. They'll be making sure that your fire blankets are untampered with. They'll be looking at the generators to make sure that they're earthed. They'll be looking at all of the fuel storage locations to make sure that they're properly bound so that if they leak, the fuel's not going to disappear everywhere and cause fire hazard. And they're going to be very proactive, but they also maintain a reactive force. And that reactive force is absolutely excellent for us because just like the fire brigade in the real world, they can be used in many different ways. So first of all, they've got rescue equipment. So if we've got a difficult to access casualty, they're the guys who will be able to help us get there. Let's not forget that we do have people who work at height on site, so riggers, people who are stood at the top of fire towers, so on and so forth. They could collapse just like anybody else. And if we need to get them down there, these lovely event fire service people are the people I'm going to go to and go, got this person up there, they've passed out, my medic's up there with them, but we need to get them down now. And they'll help us do that. So again, let's make friends with the firefighters, whether we're the people on the ground or whether they're event medical manager. Let's go make friends with our opposite number at the same level, because the more we know each other names, work together, understand our roles and remits, the better it's going to be when we're working together as a team. A private one to me, our fire services there to provide catering. Well, you'd think so, but no, unlike the real world, there is no fire station with a gym and a full catering kitchen for them to use. They have a tent just like the rest of us. So the fire safety can be used for coordinating rapid removal and transport to ambulances. So yeah, if they're there, they can be made use of. It's not their primary role, of course, they're there to respond and react. And then the last thing I want to look at is event control. So we've got a nice lovely diagram now showing the communication methods for event control. So in the middle, EMT stands for event management team. Now the event management team is the event liaison team. It's the joint agency control team. There are many, many different names that goes by. Now throw up in the chat, what is the most important communication method that is missing from that list? So what is the most important communication method missing from this list? Well done, Dr. Anne. Face-to-face, person-to-person, talking. Well done. So that is absolutely the most important method of communication, because despite all of these methods that we have available to us, 90% of communication on an event site takes place face-to-face, lips-to-lips, mouth-to-mouth, however you want to call it. Now, the event control room is the focal point for all of this communication. So whether it's the city CCTV or the event CCTV, whether it's the police communications, whether it's landline, whether it's a broadband connection, radio communications, mobiles, pigeons, pieces of paper, runners, faxes, emails, or otherwise, the focal point for all of this communication is event control. And what they're there for is they're there to ensure that the smooth operational management of the event happens. So all of that communication just gets funneled around and it's dealt with very smoothly, very calmly, very efficiently to ensure that the event is being managed as the event liaison team have intended it to be. They're there to provide a coordinated response, so they're there to work together. They're not there to nitpick and go, yeah, but you're stewarding, you should be doing that. Or, yeah, but you're the guys who brought the fence, so you're the ones who need to move it. It's not about that. It's about, right, we've got a situation, we need to block off this area. Who's got some spare bodies that can move that piece of fence? Right, security, stewarding are going to take 20 minutes to get enough staff up there. Have you got a couple of bodies that can help out over there? Lovely jubbly. Medics, it looks like we've got about 7 or 8 casualties happening over there. Can you get some guys over there and some kit? And we'll see if site can get you a 3x3 to set up a new first aid post. It's not about anybody, owning their own stuff. It's about their own It's about everybody working together and responding to that situation in a coordinated manner, because actually in event control, we are there as one event control team. And I go back to Ironman in 2015. I won't tell you which one, but I was working in the control room. I was working for a stewarding provider that was dealing with some road closures. And a nationwide stewarding organisation that was providing stewarding on another section of the route for some road closures were also present. We were sharing a radio channel, and it got a little bit busy in the morning. We had a bit of an issue in that the route that we'd driven around had changed with some event infrastructure. So we were a little bit behind the times trying to get people out, and I was a little bit busy and focused on that. And my staff were shouting up on the radio, needing stuff done. And my opposite number from essentially a competitor organisation answered my radio calls for me and then passed me some messages. And likewise, once most of the Ironman competitors had got off the section that we were running, and their area was getting really busy with people falling over or crowds building up or whatever, and they were trying to pass messages on to get a medical team or to move some more stewards, and more of their staff were shouting up, I was answering the radio for them. There was no competition. There was no, yeah, but you work for them and I work for them. There was none of that. We were simply part of the same overall event management team. We helped each other out, and there's some photos of me somewhere on Facebook throwing love hearts because, yeah, we got bored and we needed a sugar hit, so we were throwing love hearts to each other to stay awake and get sugared. Everybody just works together. Ideally, in the event control room, you have representatives from all the agencies, and that's not necessarily the agencies on site. That could be the police, it could be the NHS ambulance services, it could be the county fire and rescue services, it could be the licensing authority, it could be the local authority environmental health department, it could be the Coast Guard, it could be the RNLI, it could be your third-party safety consultants, it could be your public transport providers, it could be your event traffic management team. It's everybody who is responsible in some way, shape or form for the safety and compliance of the event should really be sat in that room, because then everybody can work together and come up with those shared solutions really quickly and really easily. Now, event control can be absolutely anywhere, can be absolutely anything. I've been in event control rooms in 12x9 marquees. I've been in event control rooms that have been 3x3 porta cabins. I've been in event control rooms that have been the ground floor of a conference centre. I've been in event control rooms that have been bespoke, very well built inside a stadium. I've been in a 3x3 gazebo where we've literally just had one radio and a notepad. Depending on the size and the scale of your event, depends on the level of control facility you need. What's important is that there is a contingency in place so that if the power fails, event control stays running. If the event is evacuated, there is a facility where event control can go to and keep running. It needs to be safe. It needs to be away from any noise. It needs to be away from the public. But beyond that, how it takes shape and form, how it's laid out, is dependent on the needs of the event. So I'm just going to bring up my little poll now, and I'm going to launch this poll. So does event control need to be in a room? So event control must be in a room. Is that true or is that false? Now, event control works best when each agency focuses on its own priorities. There is a coordinated response. Everybody uses radios, or mobile phones are relied on for communication. You can answer 1, 2, 3, or 4 for that last one. Well, let's see how people are doing. We've got a quarter of you voted so far, so I'll just give you 30 seconds or so. So almost up to 2/3 of you now, which is really great to see so many of you participating and taking part this evening. Thank you to everyone for sticking with us, even though we are overrunning a little bit this evening. So it looks like everybody's finished there, so just going to stop that poll for you. So event control does not have to be in a room. Event control on a small event can actually just be one man with a radio and notepad walking around the field. It is the focal point for communication. Doesn't have to be anything flash or fancy. But also, if you look at Reading Festival, it takes over an entire leisure centre. If you look at Glastonbury, it takes over an entire barn. If you look at most football and rugby stadia, it is a dedicated room with specific terminals, power supplies, phone lines in a particular position so it can oversee everything, but it's away from the noise. So depending on the type of event and the type of venue that you're in, depends on whether event control is a room or not. And the second one was a little bit of a trick question. I can see that everybody who responded to that question chose there is coordinated response, which is great. The other three were red herrings. So if each agency focuses on its own priorities, then you're not really working together as that one event team. If everybody's using radios when actually there's 5 of you sat in the same room, then you're not doing any face-to-face. And mobile phones are the least reliable communication method, so we don't rely on them at all. So let's just recap what we've been through. So we've looked at the event liaison team, who they are, what they do. We've looked at the differences between the event production team, who care about the whole event, and the technical production crew, who are there for making things happen that the audience are actually there for. Site services, the power, the water, the toilets, the cleaning, and everything else. We've looked at the differences between stewarding and security, the licenses and the specialisms of stewarding. We've looked at the different teams that are in the stage pit area, how that all needs to work together. We've looked at what stage left and stage right mean and how that's different to what the audience see. We've looked at event fire services, what their role is and how they can help us. And we've just finished by looking at event control. I've just had a private note about event fire services, and it's really important to consider that they are just like the event medical industry. There's no formal regulatory body that checks every single event fire service, just as there is no single body that checks every single medical service. You don't necessarily have to be a county fire and rescue service trained fire officer in order to be a private firefighter. You could, just like some unscrupulous medical firms who employ people with first aid at work, you could be a firefighter who's done a level 2 fire safety course. So standards do vary. So if you're involved in contracting those fire services, you want to know where your firefighters are coming from, where they're trained. You want to know where their vehicles are coming from, what they look like, just the same as when you're selecting an event medical provider. What qualifications do the medical staff have? Is their ambulance, 5 or 10 years old? Is it 20 or 30 years old? You want to be asking those questions, because just like medical companies, fire companies do vary greatly. And, the training and experience, as we all know as medics, is what makes the difference in terms of who's good and who's bad. So thank you very much for sticking around. If you would like a CPD certificate for your attendance, please email webinars@promed999.co.uk with your full name. If your name is different to how it's appeared on Zoom, or if you're going to email me from a different email address, please include how it's appeared on Zoom tonight, because we do check the register that Zoom gives us. And we'll email those digital certificates out to you within 3 business days of you sending an email. So please make sure you do that. I'm just going to say, please do review us as well. We have provided our webinar free of charge, so it's really nice for everybody to leave us a review. We do prefer Trustpilot, but you can also review us on Yale, Google, and Facebook. If you've been to our previous webinars and you've already reviewed us once, then please pick a different service this week and review us again. Just to make you aware that from next week, if you would like a CPD certificate, we will be checking, and we will only be issuing CPD certificates if you have already left us a review. So now might be a good time to start leaving us a review. We are going to go on to a question and answer session in 2 or 3 minutes time. I'm just going to blank my video out while I quickly sort something out at this end. So think of some really good questions, throw them in the chat box. Otherwise, please share your social media details, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Ours will magically reappear, so please make sure you follow us on all of them. And we'll do our Q&A session in about 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so let's have a little look through. We've got loads of new messages coming through there. So if you do have a question, probably the best thing to do is if you raise your hand, which you can do from the participants panel, I will ask you to unmute yourself. You can ask that verbally. That's the best way to ask your question. You're very welcome, everybody saying thank you. Indeed, Declan, stay safe as well. A few questions in from Alan asking about things like theatres, large halls, churches, and so on being exempt from SIA rules. So where a premises is licensed and a door supervisor would be required, there is absolutely no exemption, and that person must hold a door supervisor license. In terms of premises that are not licensed and where they are employing their own security directly as that venue, so they're not going through any external agency, they don't need to hold an SIA license. However, if they are contracting an external company to provide a security officer, then they will need to hold an SIA license. Alan, as you're the lawyer amongst us, you can read the stuff yourself and let us know. Stewards, of course, do not need to be SIA licensed. Only those who are engaging in licensable activity, which is the guarding of something. So guarding is where the license is required. I can see you've got a question verbally, Joel Meekin. I'm just going to ask you to unmute yourself there.
Hi there.
And hello, what's your question?
So I just wanted to pick your brains and see what your experience of dual qualified personnel on site, i.e. somebody who is working a security role, however you've come across them and they're medically qualified and they're already dealing with a casualty. Obviously, you're the medical provider from your aspect point of view, but where would your involvement with them be? Would you immediately go in and say, right, we're having it, or work alongside them? What's your take on it? I've experienced both. So just to give you my background, I am SI door supervisor. I run an event, total event production company that I've just restarted up, and I'm also FREC 3 now. Was FPOSI and med gases and stuff like that previously. So yeah, I've done it from both sides, on both ends of it, and I'm just wondering what your experience of that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So like yourself, I'm SIA, DS, CCTV, FREC, and on your personal license and all the other Gucci stuff. So first of all, in terms of people being dual qualified, there is no problem at all with somebody being there with every qualification under the sun. There's no problem with 100 people being there with every qualification under the sun. What's important from our point of view is that people who are there as the event medical team are only there as the event medical team, and it is only those people who can be counted in the numbers of first aiders or ambulance personnel or doctors or nurses who are present on site for that purpose. So we as an event medical team cannot share any other roles. And likewise, a door supervisor. So if a premises license specifies a minimum number of door supervisors or a ratio of door supervisors, only those who are there and dedicated to be there as door supervisors and have no other role can be counted as those door supervisors. So there may be other people on site with a license, or there may be other people on site with a first aid or a healthcare qualification or registration, but they're not necessarily part of those raw numbers that we need. Now, it's inevitable, especially on the larger events, with the best will in the world, we're not going to be everywhere. We are not going to be the first person to see every casualty. And we all know, in fact, that's minority of cases. So if a steward or a security officer, a door supervisor or otherwise, in the course of their duties comes across a person who is unconscious or is having an asthma attack or an anaphylactic reaction or whatever it may be, and they call that in, of course, to get the medical team out to them, and they happen to hold a qualification themselves, then there is nothing inherently wrong with them starting treatment within their training and experience. So there is the SARA laws, which essentially provides that good Samaritan protection for them, because they're not there, they're not employed as a first aider. They are acting only within the competencies and the scope of their training and, you know, the first aid manual, essentially. They've not brought any kit, so they're not, you know, they're not claiming to be anything. They're just using a pair of gloves at the most, maybe a pen to, you know, write some stuff down. And ultimately, actually, if we do have an unresponsive casualty, we do want bystanders to be providing that initial treatment. If we do have somebody in cardiac arrest, we do want that bystander doing CPR before we get there. However, once we arrive on scene, we need to be taking a handover as quickly as possible, and we need to be saying to that person, you know, thank you very much for everything you've done. Really do appreciate your help. You've obviously helped, you know, the outcome of this patient, of course. However, we have now formally taken over the clinical care, the treatment of this casualty. You can go back to your duties now, or please can you stay, because I could do with you helping the crowd in this area. Because once we've arrived on scene, we are now legally responsible. We are the provider, we are the ones who are insured, and it is our staff who have been through our vetting process as you've had the qualifications checked with the awarding bodies. So what we can't have happening is we can't have it, you know, yes, the security provider will know who their first aid trained staff are, but we can't have that security provider dispatching them to reports of medical incidents, because we don't know what qualifications they hold. We've not verified that their qualifications are indeed what they say they are with the awarding bodies. Yes, of course, if they're SIA licensed, they'll have had a standard disclosure done, but our staff actually will have had enhanced with adult and child disclosures done. And if they're providing treatment and they're using kit, then they're kind of appearing to the public as first aiders who are there for that purpose. And who is providing that clinical governance? Who is responsible? So if somebody were to make a claim for negligence against the event organizer is going to pass it straight off and say, well, it's not us, we had a medical provider. And the event and our insurers are going to go, well, who's that person who's providing first aid? Well, it wasn't ours, he was for security. Well, was he the first person there? No. Well, why did he end up going there? So from an insurance and from a legal liability point of view, we can't have them there as any more than a bystander or the person who innocently came across it and who was basically acting as a bystander with training, the same as if you or I were walking down the street and we saw someone collapsed. Yeah, we call an ambulance, but we're not just going to call an ambulance, leave it at that. We're going to use our skills to help them and hand over when the ambulance arrives. And it's those same principles that we'd expect within an event.
Okay, can I just ask two more little bits off of that? So if I give you a scenario, for instance, so if we look at Glastonbury Festival, I worked as a response team leader in a vehicle for the majority of the festival.
Yeah.
Although you stated wouldn't normally have kit, would have a pair of gloves, it's different when you're in a Land Rover. I tend to have a small kit bag in the Land Rover with me because it's physically there.
Yeah.
And I have had an incident where I've come across a patient and it was vitally important that I had it there. Yeah. Obviously, that's where the water gets muddied slightly because there's not that clear line of, oh, hang on a minute, he's just pulled a kit bag out the back of a vehicle. I've obviously not responded to that casualty. I've come across them laying at the side of the trackway. And then the second part of that was, you obviously stated if you arrived on scene, what if the initial team that came from your medical team were essentially young basic first aiders as such, as an example, and the person initially dealing with the casualty was of a higher clinical skill and had already started treatment above what a basic first aider would be doing?
So your first scenario is quite easy, because that is, you know, you've innocently came across that. Yeah. You happen to have had kit by virtue of the fact that you always carry kit in your vehicle. That's no different to you driving down the road and coming across an RTC and starting treatment there and then, and obviously calling for help. It would absolutely be appreciated. And to be fair, if I was your medical provider on site, I would give you back any kit that you used out of your kit bag. Certainly, I'll give you an example. I used to volunteer with Oxfam at WOMAD, and you know, I was a ship magnet, unfortunately, for medical. I came across quite a lot of passed out or about to pass out people, or people being trampled on. And the Red Cross were the medical provider. And, I was joking with the nurse in charge of the treatment centre that I should have a bloody Lightly card. And she just said, you know what, come in here, help yourself. If you've got anything, if you've used plasters, gloves, bandages, she's like, look, you're not stupid. I know you've got pull socks. I know you've got stuff. If you need to grab a handful of wipes, go ahead. I'll let everybody know that if you come in and start raiding that table, that's not a problem. Because at the end of the day, I was helping them out. I wasn't, going after jobs. Just so happened, wherever I walked, the job happened in front of me.
Sort of happens to me.
Yeah, exactly. So, a good medical provider will be absolutely all over that. And at the end of the day, whether you use kit out of your bag or wait until we've got there, ultimately that kit is going to be used. It doesn't matter whose kit bag it came out of. Ultimately, we're responsible for providing that kit. That's how I look at it. That's how I price the jobs. In terms of your second scenario,
I would point out on that one to the listeners as well that what I tend to do is I always make, if I'm on there as security, if I get a chance, I always make a point of speaking to the medical team and saying, look, I'm me. If you come across me, this is probably why. And I think that goes down really well when you guys do it in reverse to us as well. I think the same as you say, working together and the communication really does go well with that.
Yeah, 100% agree. To what I've been trying to say in a theme throughout the whole night as well is if you're the guy on the ground, you're Frec 3 who's on the ground and you're based near a door supervisor, shake hands, introduce yourself. Well, don't shake hands in COVID, but introduce yourself by name, get to know each other. If you are the medical team leader for the arena, go and have a chat with the security supervisor for the arena, get to know the people on your same level in the area you're working with, because by knowing each other's names and by knowing each other's skill sets and how we work and how we communicate, when we do have those incidents and issues, which always do crop up, the fact that I can go, Joel, give me a hand, mate, it's just so much slicker in the moment. The value of knowing who you're working with and making those friends for the event cannot possibly be overstated. Your second scenario, where you may have started something and the first crew on scene has a lower skill set, ultimately that's you do end up in a split responsibility situation there, because they kind of take clinical responsibility for the patient, but you still need to retain the clinical responsibility for what you've initiated beyond that. So as a Frec 4 myself, if I'm in a security position and like yourself, I've got a bag in the back of my 4x4 and it's got an eye gel in it, and that eye gel's gone into the unresponsive patient, I can't hand that over to a pair of Frec 3s. Don't get me wrong, they can manage the rest of the situation and they can call for extra help and they can repeat all the primary survey and repeat all the observations. But that little airway part is mine until somebody the same as or higher qualified than me pops along. And that's how I look at that.
Can I just say something on this point as well? Is that all right?
Yeah, go for it, Peter.
So you're right, it is a bit of an odd one. Now, if you turn up to a scene and somebody's like doing CPR, if they're doing a good job, I would leave them to it while getting the rest of the kit out. I've had it where I've gone to a scene and somebody's claimed to be a doctor. I would in no circumstances give that person kit on the claim that they're giving me without any proof. Because if they're doing malpractice, look, us as company owners, we've come across every wall in the book. Do you know what I mean? Every wannabe, this and that. And you don't know who you're going to come across in the public. And if you suddenly go, oh, okay, you're a doctor or you're a higher grade than me, here, have some kit. I really wouldn't be doing that, actually, because you're then involved. You can't, if somebody said to me there's a doctor, I'd be going, give me your identification. And I would only let somebody dealing with that patient until the point I was ready to take over. But I would prevent them. So say, for instance, I saw Matt with his eye gel. If I didn't know him, I'd say, under no circumstances do you stick that in that person's throat. Because I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're intoxicated. I don't know if you're one of these geezers that just have random bits and bobs in the back of his car. I mean, we've all seen the video of the bloke in his little van pretending on his way to an RT6. Did you remember, darling? And he had all these random uniforms in the back of his van. Yeah. Luckily, the police pulled him over. Is he one of them?
Now, I'm just...
And if you're fully assisting that person and letting that person do things and assist you, that brings you into disrepute. Like, if we do things within our grade and look after our staff, it's like you said you were security. I wouldn't even let you help me in security unless it was a case of just pump on that person's chest.
Yeah.
But in no way would I say start shoving things down his throat or applying oxygen, or even though you might tell me you can do that, I wouldn't let you do that.
I think
Yeah,
you're looking
so
at the
I'm
later
just
contact
looking-
of me approaching, whereas I was looking at it, I was already there, and those procedures have happened before you've arrived on scene. So
Exactly, and
technically, you're not responsible for. If it's after you've arrived and I'm trying to do something above your skill set, I would expect somebody to question me and go, "Hang on a minute, can you actually prove that you're competent, qualified, and so on?" I've had an exact situation as you. Common thing at a rugby club that I used to work at regularly. He was a qualified doctor, but whenever he was at the club, he was intoxicated, and he always used to come on the pitch. But that's one of the problems that you do come across. I do agree.
Yeah, now I'm just looking at our lovely resident lawyer who's just sending me some private messages by saying, yeah, by handing over kit, you're essentially counselling and procuring offence if that person is not appropriately qualified to use it, and therefore you will be jointly liable in tort, and therefore your insurance wouldn't cover you for that because you've handed kit over to someone you don't know, and that's really important. Dr. Ann has said, it's an issue when the first on scene is a member of the crowd, intox, and whose qualification is dubious. And that's obviously true because a registered healthcare professional has their professional conduct and probably wouldn't be so stupid enough to identify themselves as a doctor, paramedic, or nurse if they're already intoxicated. That being said, I do know a couple of paramedics who have had a couple of drinks and who've, maybe you've got a patient in the recovery position and have said, look, I'm a paramedic. However, I've had a couple of drinks. I can't treat this patient, but if you would like some advice, I will give you some advice on the understanding that you make the decision because I've had a drink and I'm not at this point in time suitable to have that. And again, she also kind of put on there, if she has initiated a higher level of treatment herself and the response team is first aiders, she would accompany that patient back to the medical centre and hand over to an appropriately qualified grade, and that is exactly the right thing to do and the way that we would do it and expect others to do it.
Which in the circumstances, that's exactly how it did transpire, as I say.
Yep. So thanks for your question there, Joe. I'm just going to take some more. So another question is, who ranks higher, a police commander or an event organizer? So in the realms of there is no current criminal activity or suspicion of, then the event organizer absolutely has primacy of their event. If there is criminal activity, only insofar as there is criminal activity and those involved in that criminal activity, the police would be higher. In the event of a major incident, after a handover process has taken place, the police will want primacy of it. But until the event organizer has handed over that responsibility, the event organizer is still technically higher. If anybody else has any questions, by the way, please hit raise your hand and we will have a chat on microphones. I'm just having a little look through earlier to see if we have any more questions. Yes, and take home, decide your role before you contract to an event. So if you are there as an event medical provider, you are there as an event medical provider. If you are there as security, you are there as security. If, of course, you do happen to come across something, then yeah, of course, you come across something as a bystander and you do what you can. Few things on here about COVID and things opening up. So at the moment, we do have the health protection coronavirus restrictions #2 England regulations 2020 as amended, which limit any gathering to 20 people. They limit what businesses can be open, so on and so forth. Performances are likely to be reopening from the 1st of October. My other side, as I said, I've got a lot of event experience. I am consulting through that company on some Christmas events and some performances. So it is likely that more things will be opening, perhaps for the winter season, the likes of outdoor ice rinks, which are already legal, and similar kind of grotto type experiences, snow slides and so on. And obviously they will have a need for medical provision as well. In terms of what the COVID guidelines are, that is for your employer and the event safety advisor to decide on. There is lots of guidance available on the gov.uk website. So please do look through that if you're responsible for it. If you're unsure of anything, then I would strongly recommend that you use an external safety advisory or consultant. I've got a question coming in from Tom Miller. So Tom, I've just asked you to unmute yourself if you'd like to go ahead and ask that question. Hi, Tom.
Yeah, it wasn't a question. It was just to really put the event fire sort of stuff into perspective again, and just say, obviously, with the event medical industry, like you said, it's not regulated, but there are a suite of qualifications that non-healthcare professionals can do and then practice in the event industry, which is great. And I've got similar qualifications myself. There is absolutely no equivalent for fire services. And like I said, there are very few event fire cover providers that do actually use not only qualified, experienced firefighters, but also current serving firefighters, because unlike in the medical fields, you cannot do CPD for firefighting, and you know the points that were made in the webinar earlier about the kit and everything else. There are some very, very well equipped companies out there who none of them have actually ever been in the fire service or have any qualifications or experience to back that up, yet they have all the gear. So it's just really a point for any HCPs that are used to working with local authority fire services at incidents. Don't take it that because they've got the gear, they know what they're doing with it, and they are actually firefighters, because there really are very few that genuinely are.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, off the top of my head, I can name 4 companies that I know and personally experienced and would trust to provide event fire. But yeah, that's 4, and there is at least 100 out there. Because again, just like medical kit and ex-ambulances, any Tom, Dick or Harry can get them at auction, can't they?
Absolutely. And the problem is, like I said, they can buy this kit, and it's not even the training, because as you said, you might be able to go and do a course at a maritime college or something like that. But if you've not got the experience of actually dealing with real incidents, and you've not got the subject matter knowledge of everything else that comes with being in the fire service, turning out to an incident at an event, okay, yes, you might have a small bin fire, a small grass fire, something like that. But actually, when you have an incident that involves cylinders, which is highly likely in the events industry, you do need to have all of that underpinning knowledge. You know, there's a reason it takes 4 years to qualify as a firefighter. And they don't have that underpinning knowledge. They might be able to use the equipment, they might know everything about the equipment, but it is absolutely vital that they have got that practical experience, and there really aren't many providers that have that. So it's just a word of warning: just because they have got the kit, don't assume that they are firefighters and know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it's no different at all to event medical. You know, I know several companies that have got lots of kit and very few experienced people on their team, because anybody can buy this stuff. And I think, you know, I've certainly, you know, I'll look back on the years I've done at WOMAD. The first year I did WOMAD, there was a fire that involved a gas stove. Because the wonderful members of the public had put it on top of the plastic case. Inside the plastic case, of course, they stored their full cylinders, and just for good measure, to get it at a good height to cook on, they'd put it on a pile of clothes. I was first halfway competent person on scene, and I am in no way a firefighter. But if I didn't act quick enough, that would have been a problem. And if that event fire team didn't know what they were doing, then me and them probably would have been toast, because we were close enough to certainly be involved in the explosion. The following year, we had a carbon monoxide leak in a tent. And again, that's not necessarily something that you know, an event fire company who's read a book will know how to deal with, how to check and what it could mean. Whereas the guys who were there, first thing they did was, right, gas. If there's carbon monoxide, if there's a leak somewhere, and they literally checked every single pipe, connection, cylinder, appliance, and gave it a very, very thorough and detailed look over. And again, a lesser company wouldn't have done that, but that's no different in medical. You know, we see a person on the ground unconscious, a first aider will put them in the recovery position, emergency medical technician, ambulance technician, and a healthcare professional will start thinking about why, or they might look and go, well, there's a tower there, have they fallen off that tower? I'm not going to put them in the recovery position yet. I might just use a jaw thrust. And it's that kind of difference, really. We had some talk earlier on about waste. So clinical waste needs to be disposed of through ourselves via a correctly licensed company. So first and foremost, that means we, the medical company, must hold a lower tier waste carrier's license, because we are going to move that waste, we're going to transport that waste from the event site back to our operational base or to our waste provider. But that transport does require a license in itself. So the medical company needs its own license. But then, yes, it needs to be a higher tier licensed waste broker or carrier who will take our clinical waste away from us and either treat that and make it safe for disposal, or who will landfill that for us. Controlled drugs, just as an aside, need to be denatured. So that's a pharmacy. We ourselves may hold a permit to do that, or again, an external waste treatment provider with the exemption permit to do so. Nobody should be rushing into a med room. You never know what state a patient could be in. That's absolutely true. Med centre goes down and you're changing things, absolutely. And site services, you know, they're not medical, they don't have a medical background, they just know there's power down at medical, they know medical, you know, absolutely urgently need power, so they will do what they're good at doing, they will rush in and fix things. They won't think about patient dignity and patient privacy, because that's not their training, that's not their background. So let's just have a little flick through any more recent questions. Feel free to raise your hand if you've got anything else to say. Yeah, there may be another wave of COVID, armistice parades, and bonfire nights and Halloween are all kind of absolutely, yeah, we all want them to happen, but whether events will be cancelled again, who knows? And it is important, if we are providing cover, that we actually know what has Research Council been saying, what has Public Health England been saying, what is the HCPC, what is Royal College of Nursing, the British Medical Association, the College of Paramedics, what have all of our, you know, reputable bodies been saying that we need to do, because we need to be listening to that advice. We need to be implementing that. If you work for a company, if you're freelance, please don't rely on certain companies providing you with that information. I wish I could say that everybody was reputable and would do that. Certainly at ProMed, we have, I think it's currently up to a 9-page document summarising all of the guidance that is out there and what we need to do and what we're going to tell our staff and how we're going to consult, and you know, how often we're going to wipe things down and how often we're going to deep clean during the event. But I do know other companies are just throwing stuff out there and without a care in the world. So again, just being very careful. One from Alan, what would be useful is little plastic cards for FREC 4 and above. Now, I don't have mine next to me right now, it's in another room. I will get it if you really ask me nicely. But the Health Protection Associates, it is £60 per year to register. They will verify, you've asked nicely, I'll go and get it, I will keep talking. They will verify all of your qualifications with the awarding body. They will do an update service check on your DBS. They will check your driving license with the DVLA's check system. They will check your identity using a passport, etc., etc. And then they will issue you a card with a title mapped to what they say the titles are. Now, this is where me and them disagree, because their titles are basically based on NHS ambulance trusts and are not cross-industry guidance like the Purple Guide and other things that I'm a huge supporter of. So making sure that you can see this. So what we have here is the HPA ID card. Let me just lift that up a little bit there. So as you can see, it's got my photo on there. It's got my role of emergency care assistant. It's got an issue date. It's got an expiry date. You can probably see by the way the camera and the light is that it's got some holographic features on there. And then on the back, we've got a QR code that we can scan. So it'll take you to my online profile. It'll tell you that I'm still registered and what all of my skills are. It's got a little driving license type section, which shows what my blue light qualifications are. You'll notice that I don't have any because I don't need any right now in my life. It says that it's seen my DBS enhanced. It says that I'm a level 2 member because they've absolutely checked everything. So it's got QR code in here. It's got an RFID in here. And when you go onto my online profile, it shows that I'm valid. You can also, if you really want, raise a complaint. So if somebody believed that I was treating a patient and I made a mistake, or if I acted improperly towards a member of the public, for example, they could report me to the HPA. So it's Health Protection Associates. If you can read that there, the Health Protection Associates Council. So if anybody else has any questions, it would be really good if you could raise your hand or ask any questions in the chat. Let's give everybody a few seconds to do that. If not, while you're all thinking, just a little reminder to get your CPD certificate. Just email webinars@promed999.co.uk with the full name that you'd like on your certificate. If that's different to Zoom, please make sure that you put the name and email address that is going to appear on Zoom's register so that we can verify that you were indeed here. We will email you digital certificates within 3 business days. So if you think that you haven't received it, then please check your junk or your spam because we have sent it. It has been a free webinar and I have absolutely loved the discussion and people talking. It's been our most interactive Q&A so far, which has been wonderful. It's nice to hear some other voices. But please do leave us a review. So use Trustpilot, use Yelp, Google or Facebook to leave us a review. As of next week, if you want a CPD certificate, we will be insisting that everybody does leave us with a review because this is a free service. And whilst we are doing it because we want to raise standards across the industry and we want everybody to have an understanding of what it is we do and how we can work with each other, we also are a business, and especially in times like these, we don't have as much income as we did this time last year. So by building our reputation through webinars like this is helping people get to know who we are and how credible we are. Obviously last year we had some testimonials come through from our clients. This year we don't have that. So that's everything. Thank you very much for staying on. Lord Harley, stay on, message me privately because it'd be nice to get up to Rochdale to see you. Everybody else, I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to take the video off. If you want to network with anybody on the chat, please stay on the chat, network, share your social media details, have a chat with each other. If you need to click on any of the links, that'll be visible while the chat's on. So it is currently just come up to 9, so I'll leave the chat on till about 9:15 for you all. Thank you very much. Our next webinar is 7 p.m. next Thursday evening, and we are going to be, what are we going to be doing next week? He says pressing a little magic button to find out what we're supposed to be doing. Next week is the event planning process for medical providers. So if you're an event medical coordinator, a manager or planner, or a healthcare professional who might be involved in this, if you are in the events industry and you want to know what your event medical provider should be doing, or if you're just a first aider or work for an event medical company and perhaps are considering that you might like to get more involved in the office and admin side, then that'll be a really good webinar for you guys to attend. Or if you're just interested and want to be nosy, absolutely fine as well. So thanks everybody and have a very good evening. Stay safe.